call this meeting to order. Sorry. Did I turn it off? I'm good? Okay. Scugog is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. Today, we acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic Indigenous connection to this land and recognize the contributions First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples have made, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, our province, and country as a whole. I'll ask you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Prior to the public session, Council met in closed session and we approved minutes of the closed session of the General Purpose and Administration meeting of November the 4th. And the region has asked Scugog to appoint a member to the Durham Region Transit Advisory Committee. We did receive some applications, and prior to public session in private session, Council approved Ivy Lang be nominated for appointment to the Durham Region Transit Advisory Committee. Could I have a motion, please, in public session to Councillor Kiesebrink, Councillor McDougall? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On 9.1.7, the Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting minutes from November the 8th, I declared pecuniary interest during the meeting in respect to a letter received from the Chamber regarding the retail versus service mix on Queen Street, as I'm a property owner.
That's 9.1.7?
Correct.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor McDougall.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 9.1.5, the Scugog Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes on November the 6th, 2019. Item 10.3, that talks about a property that my wife and I own.
10.3?
Yeah, in the minutes itself.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, in the...
Oh, in that.
In those minutes, yes.
9.1.5.
9.1.5, yes.
Any others?
And as well, from the PCNA, last PCNA meeting, it was listed as 072 and 073 with regards to approving CIP adjustments for a hotel. My family farm borders the golf course.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Any other declarations of interest? Seeing none, then we will move on. Announcements from Council. Councillor Brown.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I know Councillor Ross will be very excited to know that the hut goes up December 2nd or 3rd. So Santa's coming back to Port Perry. Starts December the 5th and the 6th, Thursday 3 to 5, Friday 3 to 5, Saturday 10 to noon, and 1 to 3.
You going to sit on Santa's knee, Councillor Ross?
Not myself.
Councillor Watton. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to announce or remind everyone that the Blackstock Nursery School Pancake Breakfast is Sunday from 9 till 1 at the Community Recreation Center in Blackstock. I think the adult fare is about $10, and then the child's meal is $5, and there's silent auction and book and goodie sale. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others? Councillor McDougall.
I'd just like to bring to everybody's attention that the Portrait Lions Club is holding a meeting at the Bamboo Restaurant on the 26th at 6:30. They're looking for, I believe, volunteers for the Santa Claus parade to, I think they call them elves, and they will be given reflective vests and flashlights to help direct and help. So They do have a Facebook page, I believe, under Port Perry Lions Club. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, I would like to congratulate the organizers, the Chamber of Commerce, and the many, many volunteer organizations and individuals that organized the candlelight walk and tree lighting on Friday night. It was absolutely fantastic. 10 stops with entertainment at each stop, and it was really wonderful, very heartwarming. So thank you to the organizers. Any others? Oh, Councillor McDougall?
Sorry, one other. Durham Region Transit is hosting a drop-in session. I believe it's at Voss's on Wednesday, November the 27th, from 12 till 3 and from 5 till 8. And I know that transit's been a hot topic in North Durham lately, and lots of people would like to have their input, so that's their opportunity.
Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor
Thank you.
McDougall. Yes, the region is looking at improving the services for the north, and we need the input, so pass the word around so that everybody is heard. Everybody that wants to be heard is heard, and I think they also have something on the web too, if I believe. Yeah. Anything else from council? Okay, staff. Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much. Delegations and presentations. Director Valentin, you bringing forth the final 2020 capital budget. Would you? I'm sorry, Councillor Keysbury?
Thank you, Mayor Drew. I think Director Valentin does have an announcement about a call that she received that was really cool.
Director Valentin, did you?
Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to the capital budget then. I don't know what all this is about.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I did receive a call from Allison Faith, I can't remember her last name, from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. They had received our modernization grant report, and this individual is doing a Eastern Municipality Treasurers Forum this Friday, and she reached out to me to say how impressed she was with our report on what we used or what we were proposing to use the modernization funding for, as there were a lot of municipalities wondering how to utilize that funding that was granted to them. So she wanted to reach out to me to be able to speak to our report and reach out to us in this municipality if other municipalities had questions regarding the use of modernization grant funding.
That's good news. That's very promising. And I know I want to thank staff because we take every opportunity of any grants that are available. We take every opportunity to apply for those grants so that we can maximize our dollars and improve the life of our residents and business owners in Scugog Township. So thank you for that. Okay, now do you want to move on to a presentation on the capital budget?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No formal presentation today, but I will go through the capital report on the capital budget and identify the proposed changes that came forward. So on November 4th, when the draft budget was presented, there were several questions that council had. So in order to clarify and to provide more details, some of the budget sheets were updated with additional information. There are two changes that were made to the draft budget, one being REC 012, a retractable wall retrofit at the Scugog Community Recreation Center. Initially, it was identified as a full replacement for $57,000. It was further reviewed, and it looks like we can adjust the project to not be a full replacement, but to actually paint the existing retractable wall to make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing. Additionally, a picture was included in the capital forecast, just so the public and council could see what the actual retractable wall currently looks like. The other addition that was made through the discussions on November 4th was the inclusion of the new indoor pool, the preliminary design. was added in 2023 at an amount of $200,000. So that value matches what's in our current development charge background study. So identified in the report, in today's report, there are several changes just to the details. So that's all been updated and is attached for the public. This updated budget is also posted online under finance budgets page on our website. And the two presentations that were done at our open house on November 13th, my updated presentation, as well as presentation by Director Coleman with regards to the Blackstock Recreation Complex and the new proposed indoor pool. Both of those presentations are posted on our website. So what you have before you now is a budget in the amount of $11,138,000, updated to include these few changes in all the updated sheets. What I can point out to you as well is in their project listing at the beginning of the capital budget, it was noted that the forecast is approved in principle only and subject to change. So this was identified in each of the capital project listing pages, as well as there are little identifiers now on the specific projects that are roads and road-related infrastructure, those that have significant grant funding, and those that are development charge funded projects. So these were comments that were brought forward by council at the November 4th meeting, so we've updated the budget to incorporate all of those things.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to thank all the members of council for asking your questions of Director Valentin before tonight's meeting in the anticipation that you may want changes, so that if there were changes that the director could find out how much that would be and get more information. So I really want to thank council and for asking those questions so that we can move ahead and not delay this budget. So thank you very much, all of you. Okay, any questions for Director Valentin on her presentation? Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to discuss very briefly the open house was November the 4th, that's correct? Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the open house was November 13th.
November 13th. And at that open house, how many residents did we have?
We had 6 residents in attendance.
And how many, we had comment cards available, how many comment cards did we have at the end of the night?
We received 1.
Was there any other opportunity for the public to voice their opinion?
The presentation and the budget were posted in the agenda as well as online on our budget page. Residents had the opportunity to call me. My contact information is there, or to reach out by email if there are questions. I hadn't received anything.
You received nothing?
Right.
Thank you.
I guess the public did have an opportunity in the budget survey.
Yes.
You know, so I guess it's a good thing. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to follow up to Councillor Brown's question, is it possible to do a post-mortem on the public feedback and how much they were actually engaged? We have another budget coming up, the operating budget in the new year, and this isn't a new thing, having low attendance at these functions. And I know there's a lot of staff work and time that goes into that night. To have 6 people, I'm not sure we're getting the payback that it should be. So I wonder if it's possible to look at different ways of engaging the public going forward, especially with the operating budget coming up.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm open to suggestions. This is something in my discussions with the region of Durham as well. They offered their public open house. They offered it the first time last year down in Whitby at the regional headquarters. I don't recall, I did attend that one. I believe there were more staff there present than residents as well. They offered it online as well. They did live streaming. This year they offered it in Whitby as well as up here in Scugog. And I believe there was a significant number of staff there. And I believe they said they had maybe one there for the presentation, 1 resident. Some people, they did have some individuals that live streamed and were online, but I'm open to other suggestions.
Did you want to make a point?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We could, one thing it's a good point, we've talked about at the staff level, and we're trying to learn from the region, because they didn't have a very good turnout if you went up and noticed as well, and they put a lot of effort into it, considerable effort. One thing we did think about is holding the public interfaces here in the council chambers, and if we did that, we could live stream it, or we could tape it and produce it in a similar manner. It could be done quite easily. And it might even be a better setting than the library for this type of thing. So if council's interested in that, we can pursue that. We are conscious of the fact that there wasn't a lot of public turnout, and the ways of the past, we need to look at more innovative ways. Maybe we do this and provide that council a way to provide feedback in that manner by staying home.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something?
Yeah. Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just further to the regional budget open house, when I was speaking to the CAO, she did say they had over 600 people respond through the live stream.
For the live stream. Good. Mm-hmm. That's good. Councillor.
Pardon me, was that just for the one night, or was that altogether?
No, that was during, while they were there doing the presentation. That's what I understood. I can verify, but that's how
Councillor Kieserbrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting that there was such a overwhelming response live stream. One of the people that was present at our open house mentioned to me that he almost didn't come because he was worried if there would be the requirement to speak up. He wanted to participate, but he didn't want to be in a position where he might have to say something or go on a mic or something. So that may be part of why the live stream, why people maybe are more comfortable with that type of interaction, because it's not as direct. Mm-hmm. Some people maybe would be more comfortable.
Yeah, facilitate some feedback. Yeah. Anything else? Councillor McDougall?
Thank you. Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. A question, you mentioned the presentations are online for both the pool and the Blackstock Arena. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, yes, the presentations, Director Coleman's presentation that was done at the open house is also on the budget website, web page.
Okay, very good. And then we'll expect moving forward that both of those presentations will be turned into a business case that will be presented to council for those projects?
I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Mr. CEO.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. The updated presentation that was provided at the budget open house does give a high-level business case. But yes, if we're successful with the grant, we'll be drilling that down in more detail, and we will be bringing that back to council before any awards are given with respect to the facility. But we've done it at a high enough level that we have confidence that it's achievable, and I think council was briefed on that at the session.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, anything, Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Valentin, just to confirm then, so apart from our budget online survey, either written or verbal, we've only received one comment regarding the proposed capital budget?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there has been opportunities, so. Okay, anything further? Okay, then we'll move on to, motion to, that the presentation by Director Valentin, 2020 final capital budget, 2021 to 2024 capital forecast be received. Councillor McDougall, Councillor Brown, all those in questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda, I have pulled from the agenda 9.1.4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 9.2.1 and 2, and 9.4.4 and 5. Are there any other polls? Seeing none, could I have a motion that the items listed under Section 9 consent agenda be approved, save, and accept the items that I mentioned. Counselor Ross, Counselor Brown, any questions or comments? No further polls. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 9.1.4, and that is Counselor McDougall. And you also have a conflict on part of the minutes, right?
I do. I
Okay.
have a
You
part.
have questions on the others?
Yes, just a question on item, I think it's item number 10, and it's with,
Page,
I don't have it in front of me. Hold on.
If it's item number 10, it's on page 8,
Page 8.
9, sorry.
It was a presentation that was given by Mr. Hack.
There's no 10.
1.4 is
I'm
the
sorry.
CPA minutes.
Sorry.
Page 21 is the minutes.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
It was a presentation that was given by Mr. Hack with regards to the CIP and the CIP itself. I've had a lot of questions lately with regards to the CIP and different projects that may or may not qualify. I did take the time to watch that presentation on YouTube. I think I was the 10th viewer, but it still wasn't clear to me exactly what projects may or may not qualify, and I'm wondering, is it possible for us to add some clarity in the future for what projects and, what types of developments might fit that application? I'm not sure who to direct that to.
Everyone want to answer it first?
Director Heritage, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. There is a section in the Community Improvement Plan that speaks to the uses that will be eligible for the various programs. And they include manufacturing, a whole variety of different types of offices, engineering, research and development activities, and distribution. So they're the more higher order uses that would employ a significant number of employees, generally located in larger buildings in our employment area. And as I indicated at the meeting last week, we'll be establishing policies and procedures to evaluate each and every application that comes through. Those procedures will be included in the bylaw that has yet to come forward to council for approval. And each and every application that is submitted, if it qualifies, will be brought forward to this council for review and consideration as well.
Anything further?
I'm just trying to think exactly how that might clarify for some of the developers who are coming forward with, say, an office and facility for, a trucking company or a vac truck company or whatever. There's a lot of interest being shown, and there's just people questioning. They're not exactly sure. I don't know that they've read our CIP document to see that that information is in there. So I don't know if there's a way for us possibly to push that out to them. But just a thought.
Director Heritage, then the CIO?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The CIP document is online, so it is available for viewing. And as I indicated, the permitted or the uses that will be eligible are identified in section 4.1.1 of the CIP.
So if everybody take note of that, if you have questions, say 4.1.1 on the online CIP document. Okay. Thank you. Mr. CAO, did you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And you could also refer, if they like to speak to someone, you could refer them to speak to Robin Prentice, our manager of planning. Directed one of those inquiries that you spoke of, Councillor McDougall, to her. I believe that she reached out and had a conversation, tried to explain what the criteria is and what the next step is. And the next step, of course, is, as Director Heritage has mentioned, is to come back to council with the evaluation criteria for council to approve. And then from there, we'll, in fact, no applications, applications shouldn't be approved or considered until that's done. We're also talking internally about preparing something perhaps for Madam Mayor to consider, and that's really, an overview of a CIP, what it is, why the town is doing this, why it's being done in the employment areas in downtown. What are the benefits that we see for the community, and trying to get that out of also. There does seem to be some confusion on those topics of why we're doing this and what benefit it's going to provide. We are looking at that.
Yeah,
Very
I'll be
good.
sure and include it in the future mayor's message
Okay.
coming up shortly.
Thank you.
Anything else on those minutes? May I have a motion, please? Minutes of the Planning and Community Affairs Committee meeting of November 18th, 2019 be adopted. Councillor Watton, Councillor Guido. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item that was pulled is 9.1.5. And Councillor Guido, you have a pecuniary interest on that? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Okay, so Councillor Guido, did you pull those 9.1.5?
I believe I did, and as long as,
And,
as well as someone else,
and
and I was
Counselor Watton.
second. I was second to pull it, so.
Okay, Councillor Watton, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a couple of, I guess, clarifications. On page 30, under the presentation delegations about the bell tower, I was just, there's a lot of things back and forth through it. So at the beginning, Director Heritage says that the design and reconstruction and installment of the 1,400-pound brass bell is $75,000. And in the budget that we've just okayed, it shows funding is mainly from a grant. That's the item number PUB 030. So my question is this mainly from the grant? Is this referring to the ICIP grant that the theater group was applying for? And if it is applying for that group, or is that grant, did their application include the installation of the bell? And I don't know if Director Heritage, if you can answer that, or if anyone.
Director Heritage, and is that $75,000 estimate on the bell as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Councillor. PUB 030 is in the capital budget dealing with the bell tower rehabilitation. And the total amount of $75,000 does include approximately $15,000 that's been estimated for the reinstallation of the bell in the bell tower. Now, under the ICIP grant that's been applied for, this total amount has been included in that grant amount.
The 15,000?
The total of $75,000 has been included in that amount.
Okay.
So for the ICIP grant, it includes the bell tower as well as rehabilitation of some of the features within the town hall.
So
No.
then should the total amount not be higher? Like on the capital project?
I believe the $75,000 quote includes the installation of the bell, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Yeah.
Right. But the grant isn't for 75,000.
No,
Okay,
through you, Madam Mayor, to the Councillor, it's above and beyond that.
Okay, thank you. So we're guessing it's 15,000 or whatever. And I know through here, there's some concerns through staff, you know, about whether it's worth putting it in. And I know that the Heritage Committee make that recommendation that it should be installed back into the tower. And I also note that we're putting out an RFP. So would it not make sense, and if necessary, I can make a motion to that effect, but I don't think it needs to be, that we would have a more detailed costing after the RFP to know exactly if, you know, if the bell should go there, or if it should be put somewhere else. And also, how the theater, the Town Hall Theater Group feels about if they could have their if 55 or if 15 of it didn't have to go to placing the bell in the tower, would it go somewhere else? So I know it's a roundabout way, but I think maybe before we, and I know we only received this, but I'd like to ask for a more precise costing, if possible, before we would accept this recommendation from Heritage. I'm not exactly sure how the best way to do that.
Your comments, Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. This budget figure is predicated on receiving the grant. If we don't receive the grant, we'll be coming back to council. And in the meantime, we will be, this, as I indicated, the 15,000 is just a general estimate for the reinstallation of the bell and the bell tower. We would come back to council with a more precise estimate to put that bell back in the tower.
So then, just for my own understanding, Mr. Heritage, what is the RFP going to be for then? Is the RFP going to go out whether we have the grant or not, or is it going out on the heels of receiving a grant?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it will go out on the heels of receiving the grant. If we don't receive the grant, we'd have to
We
come
won't.
back to council.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Anything else? No? Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I made some notes at the last meeting, and I don't know whether this colors things in for people or not, but as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director, because you would know better than I. It was held up by flashing. They needed to weatherproof it and support the bell. The bell was visible in 1974. I'm just going through the notes. The louvers put in due to the birds. That's why the louvers were in the first place. The brass bell wasn't working due to a lack of use. So they need to create a structure to make the bell heard. So that creation of the structure is going to cost between $12,000 and $15,000. There was some talk, and the Heritage Committee has decided against this. There was some talk of putting the bell on a pedestal or in front of the fire hall or something, or of having an electronic bell. But the sound is not true, so we decided against it. So that's why we're where we're at with that. I hope that helped fleshes things out a little bit. I don't know, and I hope I'm right.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, yes, that's basically right. One of the major concern from staff is that the bell, if the bell is to be reinstalled in the bell tower, it has to be safe, and it has to have an appropriate structure to hold it in place because it is 1,400 pounds.
Councillor Guido? I'm sorry, were you finished, Councillor Brown?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Part of the conversation regarding the bell spoke to the Heritage Grant and the fact that we wouldn't qualify because it's a township or a municipally owned building. Is it written in policy that you cannot apply it to a municipally owned building? I mean, if the Heritage Committee is supportive of the bell being reinstalled and there's monies left in the Heritage Grant, could it not be used towards the repair of the bell?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, council provides funding for that building because it is our building. So generally, we would not provide grant funding on top of the funding that we already provide to the building, so it would be double dipping.
But if there's money left in this year's budget for the Heritage Grant Committee, could that not be considered towards that project?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that would be a decision that would have to be made by council.
Director Valentin?
If I may, through you, Madam Mayor, it's a different funding source that we'd be looking at. So the money for the Heritage Grant, if there's money left over, it would just go back to the MP reserve, which is where it's currently funded from. And because the Town Hall 1873 is a facility, any funding that's required for that building will come out of the building and the facility reserve.
Okay, all right, thank you. My next question is on page 32 of our agenda package in regards section 7.2. The school site on the east side of Union Avenue has an insufficient land for the school's use. This is DDSB's official decision that they're not planning on building a school in that location?
Through you,
Director-
Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The Durham District School Board is still intending to build a school on that site. They have indicated to staff that there's insufficient outdoor play areas for a soccer pitch that they're looking at placing on that site. So they've had negotiations with staff about the possibility of acquiring some additional land, and that's open space land that's in the township's ownership. However, at this point in time, we are going through an exercise of designing the Perry View Stormwater Management Pond. And there are a number of new developers that will be contributing towards that pond, and that design has not been completed yet. So we don't know at this point in time how much land is required for the ultimate pond.
So which land is in discussion to be potentially used or given, sold, whatever, to the DDSB? Is it in the same area?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, it's to the councillor. It is in the same area. It's immediately west of the Perry View Stormwater Management Pond. So it's the area between the pond and the future block, school block, that fronts on Union Avenue.
Okay. And will that be coming to council if that is a decision that needs to be made, or is that a decision that's done at the staff level?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it would go through a full public consultation process and ultimately come forward to council.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Clerk, there are a few grammatical misses in these minutes. Can I forward those changes before they're finalized?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, absolutely, thank you.
Anything else? I had on page 32, 7.2 there, that whole section is a little weird. I think it needs to be kind of more standalone. For instance, the second last bullet said the appeal is still outstanding. The appeal on what? The last bullet under that section, Mr. Heritage noted that DDSP has proposed, I think that's supposed to be a B, has proposed to repurpose the building and move it to their headquarters on Taunton. I'm presuming that's Epsom, but it doesn't say that. So I'm wondering if they could just have a look at that section and make sure it's very clear. Thank you. And with regard to the bell, just as a reminder, we receive these minutes and any recommendations go to staff. And given that there is some conflicting opinions on the bell, I think staff will probably, and I'll check with Director Heritage and Mr. CAO there, but it would be my assumption that if the grant comes forward, that we will get the quotes and we will have a further discussion on whether the bell is included or not. Would that be fair to say? And that would be a decision? Would that be fair to say?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so what I think what I heard council request is that irrespective of the grant, that they wanted a more detailed estimate of what it would cost to make sure that it can be accommodated within the budget. So if the grant is approved, we would have council would be approving for this for 75,000, and then we would determine whether it could be done within that estimate, because it is a general estimate, I must say, and we'll have to do a more detailed design to make sure the costs are accurate. And then I think I heard Councillor Watton say that she wanted to know the cost of putting the bell in at the end of the day.
Okay, so that's a decision that we'll be making at some time in the future if we get the grant.
Yes, we can bring that forward in a award report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question on page 36 with regards to the attachment.
Yes?
A question I have is it appears that Ward 1 has a particularly large number of heritage properties. Is there no other wards that have heritage properties worth considering in addition?
Director Heritage?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. There was a list of potential heritage properties that were being considered by the Heritage Advisory Committee. There were a couple of members of the Heritage Advisory Committee that put this list together. Staff reviewed that specific list that was brought forward. We recommended certain properties be moved to the registry as listed properties, and others we felt did not qualify. So what the Heritage Committee is doing is recommending that the properties that have been recommended by staff be brought forward and be placed on the Heritage Registry as listed properties only.
And is that only, sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, is that only done for Ward 1 or is that done for all the wards?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, no, it's done for all the wards.
Further
Well,
through
I
you, Madam
believe
Mayor.
there's been a number that have been done in the past, so maybe there's a lot more in other wards as well, but maybe they've already been done. Would that be fair to say, Director Heritage?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the Heritage Committee minutes? Could I have a motion, please, that the minutes of the Scugog Heritage Advisory Committee held November 6, 2019 be received? Councillor Guido, Councillor Ross. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. And we'll move on to 9.1.6. Councillor Ross, you pulled that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a,
Page 40?
that's correct, just a correction on page 41, under point 3, Athletic Accessibility Project Update. Just within there, just need to make clear that I did not attend the tennis AGM, but I did pass on the copy of the minutes.
Okay,
Otherwise, I motion for this to be received.
okay. Motion to be received as amended. And a seconder, please. Councillor Watton. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. 9.1.7, this is the one, Councillor Rito, that you have a conflict on, and Councillor Kiesebrink, did you pull this one? Page 44?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just a question for Director Heritage on page 47. There was discussion about tiny houses in the accessibility event or the housing event that occurred. And I just wanted to ask you, Director Heritage, are tiny houses currently permitted in Scugog? And if not, could they be incorporated into the reports that are coming forward soon where we amend our legislation to correspond with the province, where they've made changes to allow for houses that are not currently linked houses?
Yeah, are you, yeah, we're in the economic development, and I had you down as, Councillor Kiesebrink as pulling 9.1.7, Economic Development Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that I should be asking this question for 9.1.11, perhaps?
Probably. Yeah. Okay, there are no questions on the economic development. Councillor Watton?
Just on page 46, further to that, it does speak to the 5th Annual Housing Symposium, and it does speak to the tiny houses in the economic development.
So
And
that's what you're
that's
referring to?
what's-
Okay. Okay, so,
It's on
Director
page
Heritage?
46, Item 3, sorry, Director.
page 46, 46? Right at the bottom, yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, the councillor's correct. Staff is reviewing the updated legislation that the province has brought forward regarding dwellings in accessory buildings, secondary dwelling units, and a review of tiny houses will be performed as part of that or undertaken as part of that report that would be coming to council.
That's wonderful news. Thank you very much, Director Heritage. Further through you, Madam Mayor, I did have one other question that was predicated from the discussions around the economic development minutes, if I could.
Please.
I was just wondering to you, as Mr. CAO, the Chamber of Commerce letter that was asking about potentially limiting the percentage of service businesses to retail businesses in the downtown, and asking if there's a way to facilitate this to protect our tourism destination. I think the question was also raised if this could somehow be incorporated into our CIP. I was just wondering if you had any comments with respect to that, or if this is something that we will be looking at in the future.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I thought that the minutes of the Port Perry Business Improvement Area spoke to this well, where they intend to try to address this potential problem amongst their members first. And we would recommend at the staff level we would agree with that course of action, that really it's the members within the BIA and that can regulate themselves in this regard and strive for an appropriate mix of retail and service commercial in the downtown. Barring that, should this matter be a problem, council does have the ability to pursue a zoning bylaw amendment that would prescribe the percentage of retail or service commercial that would be permitted in the downtown. I would not recommend that to council unless it was a problem and it was being endorsed by the BIA and perhaps the chamber. Zoning bylaw amendment is a regulatory way of dealing with the problem and is appealable by the members within the downtown if they were not in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. CAO, and I can also see that that might be a difficulty for an owner of a building, for example, that needs that facility rented out. If it's legislated what they can or can't do there, that could be a challenge. So there's a lot to speak to, and with regards to that, I appreciate your insight. I think that's a good strategy.
Any further questions? May I have a motion, please, that the minutes of the Economic Development Advisory Committee held November the 8th, 2019 be received? Councillor Watton? Councillor McDougall? Further questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 9.1.9, Scugog Tourism Advisory Committee, page 55. Councillor Guido, you pulled that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I initially wanted it pulled simply because we hadn't received amended to the minutes the actual job posting or job description, but we've since received that in email today, which is great. I would just like to make a comment on this, and I believe I've been rather vocal about this comment every time this topic comes up, but in reading the job posting or description, I still don't see that there is a relationship between the soon-to-be hired Northern Durham tourism, regionally funded tourism position. I don't see it correlated to this job description here, which has a concern for me simply because when I'm thinking of a part-time tourism office and a tourism employee that the township is funding, I would have hoped that in their job description that while we don't manage this employee, that there is the ability for the newly to-be hired person to be able to liaise with them and even provide work to them to do other than potentially answering phones or questions. I would have really liked to have seen that there was that tie, that it's a cohesive plan when we're thinking of tourism. And unfortunately, I don't see anywhere in the job description where it would allow that dialogue.
Mr. CAO, would you like to answer that question, or?
I will try, Madam Mayor, through you. It's a good observation. I guess my thoughts on that are the regional tourism coordinator is not yet hired. However, we do understand that they're very close and they'll be making an announcement very early in the new year. We could, with that in mind, Councillor Guido, once that person's hired, connect these two and try to formalize in some way, you know, so the right hand is working with the left hand in this regard, and with the township. We really didn't have a lot of input into the job posting. I provided some comments when it was just before it was going to the tourism committee on the role, to make sure that it was clear that this was not a township employee, it's an employee of the BIA and chamber, but still one that we wanted to further tourism within the township. But that would be done in consultation with the township and not singularly. Like, for instance, you know, they wouldn't have direct access to our website or be able to change content without submitting us the drafts for approval. We need to bear in mind this is a BIA Chambers employee. But your point's well taken, that we need a concerted effort, and we are getting a new position, and something we can look at for sure.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And if I may, Madam Mayor, while I appreciate that they haven't hired the regional position yet, we know it is a funded and approved position. And, you know, they have things such as sweeping the front porch and watering any planters in the job description. We don't have planters.
This is for the BIA
Right.
chamber one.
We
not
don't
the-
have, yeah, not for the region one, but we don't have planters 12 months a year, but it's identified in a job description. So I would have been far more, I would have greatly appreciated the relationship identified on this job description.
And through you, Madam Mayor, be glad to take that back through the chamber as council's comments on the job posting. I didn't fire this for you today and said that they would be going to council for some input, so we can give that input and ask if they would be open to make that change.
Would it be fair to say that, you know, speaking to the left hand, talking to the right hand, would it be fair to say, although this person would not be accessing our tourism website, I would think it would make sense that if that person sees some things that needed to be in it, that the left hand would talk to the right hand on that one and provide input on what the needs are, maybe.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. In fact, one of the components that we did have input on was, you know, that there would be draft content prepared. One of the responsibilities for this person, they could work on draft content. We have a need for updating and providing current blogs and information on the website. A role we see for this position is we're having difficulty getting the businesses to input their events. And so this person on the weekend when they have idle time we've talked to the chamber about getting those events entered. They really should be entered by the businesses themselves, but there's being slow take up on that. This person can start to populate that field. Because when that field is populated in our website, of course, as you know, it's connected to central counties. So it gets a double bang of not only being promoted by us, but being promoted by central counties.
And the region too, probably.
And yes, that's right, in the region.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. And Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to Councillor Guido's comments, I agree wholeheartedly. I just would like to also say, though, that part of the conversation at the tourism meeting also did go around that the tourism coordinator from the region would be working a couple of days a week here through the week, and the part-time person for the chamber would be working on the weekends. So that's not to say the synergies can't work. But it was part of the conversation that there wouldn't be that interaction unless it was through email or what have you. So just to that point, it was much discussed how to put that together, how it could create synergies, but in the end, it was just through the emails and so on, and I just wanted to qualify that.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, and With the evolution of the tourism committee, which is new this term of council, and the excitement and energy around the tourism strategy and portfolio, I do agree there is a need for the three groups, the township, the region, I'll put chamber, BIA together, to have a more coordinated approach to tourism. So all those people know what they're doing. It is something that Lori Bowers, who sits on the tourism committee, and I have discussed, and we want to work on with the new tourism coordinator when they come. So you're right in saying that that's an area I think that we need to do better.
I'm sure we'll get that done. Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 58, item number 7, it's other business matters and new business. Talks about the retail versus service mix. I know we just spoke about that. I would really hasten the township to delve into this. Just personally, my feeling is part of the beauty of downtown Port Perry is it is a functioning community, and what may be discouraged as a non-tourist business may have high value, i.e. A meat person on the main street probably wouldn't be seen from the outside as a good tourist use. But the service businesses that are downtown, i.e. Three Banks, are businesses that draw us down every single day. When the LCBO left, that was a hole in our downtown. So these service businesses provide important services that draw our citizens down every single day. And that's all on that. Question on page 61 in the minutes. It's with regards,
That's the BIA.
oh, sorry. Oh, we're not there yet,
Ne-
sorry. Okay, thank
Next
you.
report.
Yeah.
It's been pulled. Okay, anything else on the Tourism Advisory Committee? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion, please, that the minutes be received. Councillor Watton, Councillor Ross, all those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. And the next one, Councillor McDougall, but I have Councillor Brown actually pulled this one, and it's the Port Perry Business Improvement Area, page 59. So I'll put you on the list, Councillor McDougall.
Thank you.
But no, Councillor Brown is first. I'm saying I'm putting you on the list.
We're just discussing heat, if it's possible to turn it up a little bit.
Oh, we don't let the chief handle that. Please. Yeah, it is kind of cool in here, isn't it? Yeah.
He's the guy that makes it cooler.
Warmer, chief, warmer, please. Okay, Councillor Brown, you pulled this one on the BIA. It's page 59 in the agenda.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, on page 61, I believe it's the second paragraph. It suggests that the town, doesn't suggest, it says, the township has said no to the renewal of the lease. That is not correct. The township has not said no to the renewal, but they have said no to the idea of added rent. So I'd like to make that distinction.
Correct? Well,
And on page 67, item 13, it says Healthy Lake Scugog Steering Committee report. That should be the Port Perry Waterfront Action Plan.
thank you. I was kind of confused because I wondered who made that report. Thank you. I noticed that as well. Okay, thank you. We'll make sure that those corrections are passed on to them. And Councillor McDougall, anything else, Councillor Brown?
No, not at the
Okay.
moment, thanks.
Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 61, just in reviewing the Brock's Department parking store lot lease, 3/4 of the way down the page, it talks, S. Bennett shared that previously the BIA did contribute $5,500 per year. At that point in time, was the municipality doing the plowing and the maintenance and everything else that was required to upkeep that parking lot?
There's nobody here that can answer that, but I believe that the township did, and that was part of the agreement. But
Okay,
I'm not entirely sure.
fair enough.
It's a long time ago.
So there is history that at one point in time, the BIA did make a contribution to the Brocks for the use of that parking lot.
Yes, they did.
We
At
think.
one time, yes.
Okay,
Okay?
that's all. Thank you.
Any other questions on the BIA? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion, please, that the minutes held November 12th, 2019 be received. BIA, Councillor Watton, Councillor McDougall. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. 9.1.11, who pulled that one? Oh, no, nobody pulled that one. Sorry, that one's already been passed. 9.2.1, page 74, Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had some questions and discussions with Director Coleman. On Davitz Road between Rural Route 57 and Cartwright East Quarter Line, there's an 800-meter section between street address 3561 and 2771, as well as a couple of other bad short stretches to the east of that section. Director Coleman, you'd advised that a rough cost estimate for these worst sections of the road would be around $250,000. Given that we have a forecast for $1.59 million to redo Davitz Road in 2023, and while I agree that it's not efficient to do part roads, but yet given the conditions in these particular sections are so deplorable and create such adverse risk for residents and businesses, many of whom have written us with grave concerns and alarm, I would like to make a motion that staff in the 2020 capital budget, so next year, look at how to move forward this worst portion from the 2023 forecast into sooner, and then take that $250,000 out of the 2023 budget in order to tackle this worst section of Davitz Road in a more immediate and a more urgent manner.
So right now it's in the 2023 budget. So part of the recommendation is that we approve in principle. So would it be fair to say that maybe we could have the Works Department have a look at this in the forecast?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Have a special look at it, because
yes, that's what I'm asking. I'm not suggesting that anything changes for 2020, but I'm making a motion that this be looked at, that it can be incorporated into the next capital budget to address the worst sections in a more immediate manner, and that's not taking any money away from anyone. That's just reallocating some of it and moving it up sooner. And I know as a general rule, we don't like to do that. We like to do a whole road at a time. But in some instances where we have such terrible roads and such emergency situations, we discussed that this might be a solution to help alleviate some great distress. We've had some businesses and people write in that are in a grave situation, and residents as well. Thank you.
so there's a motion on the floor. I guess, I don't know, would this be an amendment, Mr. Clerk, or? Okay, sorry, yeah, we don't have a motion on the floor yet. So how about we look at the recommendations on page 74, and someone make a motion to put it on the floor, and then if there are any amendments. Councillor Watton, seconder for the capital budget motions, recommendations on 74. A seconder, please. Councillor Ross. Okay, so you have an amendment that, would you like to repeat the wording of your amendment?
That staff look at the forecast in 2020 capital budget, 2021 capital budget.
Problem with doing these on the floor is, yeah, what you really want is the Works Department to have a look, especially at Davitz Road next year, and see if they can move it in the forecast. Would that be fair to say?
Either move it in the forecast or at least bring forward that worst piece and deal with that sooner before 2023.
Just a reminder that all throughout the township, there are roads with worst pieces on it, so. And
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that, and it's just to ask if it can be looked at.
Okay, I think that's fair to say because they do review it every year. And so we'll just make sure that the work staff have a look at that one in particular. Okay. Have you got a wording for that, Mendon, or would you just take that as direction? Is that okay? Would that work, Director Coleman?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I've already made notes and had conversations with Councillor Kiesebrink, so I will take that direction, no problem.
Would that be the direction you prefer? Yes. Yes, okay. That's good. Then that gets away from the squeaky wheel business, because we do have the roads projects reports, so, okay. We'll take that as direction then. Is that okay, JP? Yeah, okay, fine. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Kiesebrink, which report was that? Pub
040.
So the one that's forecasted for $1.5 million? Pub 040? On our forecast is 1.59. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong one.
Pub 040, yeah.
So the direction to staff is to look at moving a $1.5 million project or a portion of it?
Director Coleman had advised that to deal with just the worst sections of road would be around $250,000. So my ask is to just pull that bit to tackle that worst section, but leave everything else the way that it is.
Okay, so she's just providing, we are providing direction to Director Coleman for her department to look at that project next year, just to look at it and see where it falls in the priority list.
And then it would come back to us
Yes,
that year
during the next
to
budget.
advise which project may not be moving forward to use that funding for this portion.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
thank you.
anything on the forecast can be moved around, considering any changes in the roads themselves or any other projects. Be fair to say? Okay. Any other questions or comments on the capital budget? Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just if I may, to Director Coleman, or actually to Director Valentin, the recommendation number 3, where it does speak to the capital forecasts as detailed in attachment 1, they're being approved in principle, but they will be subject to potential changes and with subsequent budgets. So my question is, should Devitts, i.e. Devitts Road, fail hugely in the next year, would it then maybe, just because it's subject to potential changes, is that a potential change for staff to look at it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the condition of a road changing, we would look at it again as part of the budget process, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody clear on that? Okay. Councillor Brown, you had your hand up? You're good? Okay. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Got a couple questions for clarification and a couple amendments. First question is in regards to Rec 001, the pool design, which was added a little bit later, and just comparing that with 2 other of the reports. The pool design right now is for $200,000 for a design. Director Coleman.
Page 255.
We have a Blackstock design that's 1.8 million, and that 200,000 K for a pool design, if you put it in context with the Palmer Park washroom design at 20K and the building design at 200K, I'm just wondering if that's a realistic estimate and what that actually gets us for a pool design.
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So this design process is a preliminary design, it's not the detailed design. So the preliminary design cost for the Blackstock Community Center is $150,000 is what we have budgeted this year, and that's what we're working with. So it'd be very similar to that process. So it would be doing conceptual design, figuring out what servicing requirements we need to do some public consultation. So just and a more detailed cost estimate than what we have today for the pool. So it's not the full detailed design. Whereas the other ones you referenced would be detailed design.
That would put us in a good position to apply for grants if we have a preliminary design.
Exactly, yes.
Thank you. That's what we want to do, is get a grant.
That's a good segue into my next question. Is that's at 2023 forecasted budget? At that price tag, if a grant comes up between now and then, I know we don't want to be rushed going into these things with a grant. That means if a grant comes between now and then, we won't be prepared to apply for a grant. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, we wouldn't be in a very good position to apply for a grant until we do that preliminary design. That's true.
Okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, just follow up. So then, I'm not sure where that money was found for the 200,000 in 2023 in the forecast. Was it a reason it was found in 2023 and not earlier? If grant approval is kind of based off of it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So it comes from the development charges, and part of it is that we won't necessarily have the development charges until then. The other issue is workload. So we're already working on one major facility, and hopefully we're successful with that grant. And there's only so many projects that staff can manage at one time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question is in regards to the Palmer Park washroom design and the build, which is PAR 001 and PAR 014. Just had a number of questions as to why a washroom design is costing us $20,000 and a build would cost $200,000 for the public washrooms. If maybe you could go into a bit more detail for that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I couldn't hear the last piece of that.
Sorry, just wondering why we have the price tags involved with $20,000 and $200,000 for the design and the build. If you could maybe go into some detail as to why the prices are quite as high that some of the public is finding it difficult to understand why that would be so high for a washroom design.
Okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillors. So part of the project will be looking at different options. We've had some demonstrations of self-cleaning washrooms, so we can look at what type of unit we could get for that and what type of servicing it would need. We'll also consider prefab standard washroom types or a design build, like building it from scratch. So it'll be a bit of a process to consult and find out what's the best value for our money for the washroom. The $200,000 is a fairly reasonable cost based on some preliminary costs that we have seen so far for that type of structure. So, and 10% for detailed design is a very common number that is used.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Just the 200,000, would that vary depending on if it's a self-cleaning washroom or a self-build? Is that a high-level price then?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the councillor, it's my intention to try to keep it close to 200,000 as I can. So what that would mean if we went for a more expensive option like the self-cleaning one, we would get less units for it, less stalls. If we went through another one, like we built from scratch, it might be cheaper to get to more units. So that's part of our review that we're going to do over the next year, is for each of the options, what would we get for that $200,000?
Okay, thank you. If I may just move to, we'll get the ugly one out of the way. Report REC 039, which is the pickleball courts construction that is at $360,000 that's forecasted for the 2021 budget. Just a quick preamble here. I don't want to come across as a pickleball hater by any stretch.
Page 289.
Thank you. My concern is that the forecast that we have here is to help plan projects and to allocate resources for it. And I'm concerned that this is a placeholder to appeal a very vocal group. I do respect their need for an outdoor pickleball court or a pickleball court to be used in the summer. I'm not convinced, though, that we've had a proper business plan for it, that all the options have been looked at. And the communication that's out there, we have King's Landing giving a communique that they are putting although it hasn't gone to the planning department, that they're putting an outdoor pickleball court in. And then more recently, the pickleball club, Port Perry Pickleball Club, stating that they'd be happy to go to Blackstock Recreation Complex. My concern is that although this may help with grant applications, that I think council can provide support for a grant application going ahead without having it in the forecast. Not to say it won't be there, but there are a number of projects that we have or people would like to come and have their project as a forecast in the budget. And how this made it in there, I'm not convinced it should be there. So I'd like to make a motion that report REC 039 be removed from the capital budget forecast for 2021.
That's an amendment. So do you have a seconder for your amendment? Councillor Guido, questions or comments on the amendment? You do realize that this is just a forecast and we are only approving in principle and things can change.
I do. It's
Okay.
in principle that it going forward in the forecast.
Okay. Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this item in particular is going to need $310,000 in grants. Is that correct, Director Valentin? I don't know if you got the page up, Rec 039.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct.
And subsequent, if I may, and through you, Madam Mayor. So there's the possibility, and I don't know what percentage it would be, but there's the possibility that this may not fly anyway.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. If we are not successful in receiving a grant.
And subsequent, if I may, this is budgeted for 2021. So if we have another look at this, we have the opportunity to have a look at whether or not this is viable next year, as opposed to tonight.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kieserbrink, then Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, Director Valentin, if we don't allocate funds and the grant application is made, then would the grant application fail? Does the township have to be a partner in order to actually make those grant applications?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't believe so. I don't believe we need to.
So just for clarity, so so they can apply on their own without participation from the township, and then if they get grants, then come forward and ask for additional funding from us, or how does that work? I'm just wondering how this grant process works for them.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I guess it would depend on the type of grant. That would just be our portion that we would put forward, but we are not obligated in any way to put anything forward.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I guess what my question is if we are a partner with them, if they can make the grant application and say that the township is contributing a certain amount, does that bode better for them? Are they more likely to get a grant versus just doing it on their own? I guess maybe that's what I'm asking.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe it would depend on the type of grant that they would be applying for. So it would all be dependent on that.
They may ask us for an endorsement, you know, which is just a letter saying, yeah, this is a good idea and there's a need for it in the township. But as Director said, it does depend on the grant. They're all different. So, Councilor, anything further? Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just further to what Councillor Kieserbrink said, both my experience with applying for the Ontario Trillium Foundation as well as the Horizon Seniors Grant, it is my belief that having the township as a partner and also contributing helped move our successful grants forward. And also with the skateboard park. They all got grants, but I know that in having attended the Trillium Foundation like workshops, the more partners you can have and the more financial input you can have, it really speaks to your grant applications and the support thereof. That's not to say that we're obligated by any means, but, and again, it's only my opinion, it does help with those applications. And further, if I may, Madam Mayor, my only other comment to Councillor Ross's comments would be that if they did apply to the Ontario Trillium Foundation or even the New Horizons grant, they would have to have a business plan to submit that grant. So they would have their act together by then.
Further? Okay, Councillor McDougall? And then you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to, I believe, Director Coleman. Actually, I was just looking through the budget and I was looking for the Greenbank Court resurfacing, which I think used to be in the forecast and I can't find anymore. But when the pickleballers were here, I did offer up, I believe the Greenbank tennis courts were projected to be resurfaced and could have been used for pickleball. Do you have any recollection what the cost of that resurfacing was?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I don't know what the cost was, and I don't remember if it has been in the forecast since we've had a funded forecast. I'd have to go back through my records to see.
Okay, but it was in the forecast at one point in time. But I know that
It's been discussed, but I'm not sure where it was.
Mr. Doble knows well, but I don't have him with me. Sorry, Mr. Doble knows well, but I don't have him with me. But I do have pickleball surfaces available for play in both Greenbank and Seagrave that are already in existence that would not be that expensive to rehabilitate such that they would be able to be used. So that is a consideration. But they did not seem interested at all the day they were here doing their presentation. So I don't know if that's worth going back to the pickleballers for, but there is surfaces available that would require not anywhere near this amount of work. Thank you.
Okay. Before I go on to Councillor Guido, I just want some clarification, Councillor Ross and Councillor Guido. Are you intending by your amendment to remove this entirely out of the forecast, or you just want to move it up a few years, or?
I'll confer with my seconder, but it's to remove it out of the capital budget altogether at this time, based on the.
It's a capital forecast, not
Sorry,
the capital
the
budget, yeah.
capital forecast, based on my notion that as we're hearing, I don't think everything's been gone through as far as the brain process on these courts. They're asking for money, they have an idea of how much they may need, but we've heard multiple ideas of how to get it done. We have multiple resources available, so it's to remove it completely out of the forecast.
Are you in agreement with that? Councillor Guido?
Sure, Madam Mayor. I second it so that we can have discussion, so.
Okay, and your questions?
Thank you. Do we have any indication as to when and what grants they would be applying to and for? Do we know?
Well, I think two of them, Councillor Watton mentioned that they would probably be applicable, and that's Trillium and what was the other one? Horizons? Horizons, Seniors Horizons.
But did they give any indication as to when they'll start the submissions?
No.
So just out of curiosity then, why was it added for the 2021 forecast? Were we given an indication that they would be moving that quickly, that they would start the grant submission so that we would need the money for the following year?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, we've had several meetings with them, and they are anxious to move forward with it quickly. And we have told them that, if they want it, that they're gonna have to come up with funding through grants or through fundraising on their own, and the township would contribute as well. But, so I believe that they are anxious to get going on the applications.
Okay, so then perhaps you could explain then how it would work if we're successful with getting the grant for the Blackstock Recreation Center and the pickleballers would go in there, they would no longer need a grant because it would be built into the facility, or would that grant go towards the Blackstock Recreation Center?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that grant would not go into the Blackstock one. We would know about the results of the Blackstock application by spring or summer of next year. And so this budget, we wouldn't be finalizing until this time next year. So we would know what was happening in Blackstock before we would approve this as a capital project.
Okay, thank you. And further to what Councillor Ross indicated that King's Landing was looking to put a pickleball court in there. I wasn't aware that they were. Is there anyone on staff that's able to speak to that, and if they would be, no?
Director Heritage or CAO?
I'm not aware of it, so.
No, okay, you're not aware of it? No, okay. Oh, Councillor Ross, are you?
Yeah, I can speak to it just in that it appeared in the Focus on Scugog magazine, and then further conversations with someone in their office confirmed that that was a proper press release. So, and within it, they said that they would have outdoor pickleball courts.
Thank you. And I suppose Councillor Ross isn't prepared to answer my next question, would they make that open to the public versus just the residents that live there?
I can't speak to that, but no, I can't speak to that.
Just one comment that I would like to make. You know, there has been a couple of questions about how accurate these figures are. Would it be fair to say, Director Valentin and Director Coleman, that, and all senior staff, that you get some cost estimates, some high-level cost estimates for budget purposes, but you don't drill down getting tenders or anything like that until we're sure that we're going to move ahead with the project? Would that be fair to say?
Yes, Madam Mayor, that's accurate.
Okay, based on experience and getting some high-level estimates. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my last question then.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were
No,
finished.
no,
Go
I was
ahead.
kind of finished and then I realized I wasn't. If this amendment is successful and it's removed from the forecast, and they're successful in submitting their grant request, they would then have the opportunity to come to council to request it to be added to the forecast or the budget when you're working on it next year then. Would that not be an appropriate timeline that they could do?
I'll ask the clerk first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to council. If that is the desire of council, I would suggest that you include that in your motion today, because as it stands right now, it's being removed completely from the capital budget forecast, with no conditions of it being returned at a future date. So I would suggest adding that if that's the desire.
Did you want to alter your amendment? Or?
Sorry, I'm just a little confused. You're looking at moving it so that if the grant does come available, that the money will be available from the township to assist with that. Is that correct?
Is that? Yeah, it's your decision.
Based on the confusion that I have on what we just said, no, I wouldn't. I need some more explanation as to why we'd amend it. If you could provide that.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you, council. Sorry if I confused the situation there, but right now the motion being that it be removed from the capital budget forecast is direction to staff that it not be put in a capital budget forecast. So based on what Councillor Guido said, that if a grant was received by the pickleball group, would we then put it in the forecast? The staff direction is no, we wouldn't, because if this is passed, of course, we wouldn't, because we have direction from council saying not put it in the forecast. So sorry if I confused that there, but the direction, if passed, would be it would not go in the forecast, and that's the direction to council if this is approved. If, as Councillor Guido mentioned, they did get a grant, and would we then put it in the forecast? I think you would have to add that as a condition to your motion right now to say that. Otherwise, staff have direction not to put it in.
Okay, thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Then absolutely, my intention is not to remove this completely from the radar on pickleball within the Township of Scugog, but my belief is that the ducks are not in a row right now. And although a grant application is desirable, as Councillor Watton said, we'd still have to see a business plan. The fact that it's been moved up to 2021, I'm not sure that at this time they're ready. And so I would be happy to amend it to, if a grant is received, then it would be placed within the forecast. But I do have a problem with the money attributed to it is at what level. I know it's very high level as far as budgeting is concerned for a new court altogether, but we've looked at different options in the delegation that they had to council in regards to using the infrastructure that we already have at the tennis courts, the Scugog Recreation Complex, if there's something we can do for it, to have it actually in the budget this time. I think it's very important that we have this forecast and that it speaks to people's expectation as to what's coming, and that to have it in 2021 is presumptuous. So I'll leave it at that.
Any other questions? Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I'm having a difficult time understanding, we want to, or some of us at least want to take this and move it, but are we taking it out then? Or are we voting on taking it out, or are we going to leave it in? And if we're going to leave it in, then does it make any difference if we leave it in and look at it again next year? Like, what's the difference between leaving it in and looking at it next year, and the difference between taking it out now or amending it to say, well, if you get your grant, we'll have a look at you next year?
You've got a good point.
Okay, if I can speak to that, Madam Mayor. I think the point is that if you get the grant, we'll put it in the forecast, but you don't have the grant, you don't have a grant, you don't have the business model, you don't have a plan, but we've given you a placeholder in the forecast for it. I think there's a lot of important things in this forecast that need to be there, and that this is placating to a group, with all respect to them. But I think that we need to have an actual plan before we put anything in the forecast. If they have a grant, then I'm supportive of this money going towards it, absolutely. But I believe that there's a difference between the two options of leave it in here right now, or if you get the grant, we'll put it in here.
Councillor Brown?
I don't want to play pickleball with you verbally, but maybe out in an outdoor court in a couple of years. I think if I'm not mistaken, Councillor Watton said that they have to have a plan in order to be successful, to have a grant in the first place.
That's correct.
So there will be a plan. If there's no plan, there's no money, and there's no money, there's no pickleball courts. So there's nothing to worry about that way. There will be a plan. They will make their pitch for grants, and then we'll go from there, and we can look at it again next year.
It's a placeholder, yeah. Councillor McDougall?
I believe the municipality's contribution is $50,000 towards the pickleball courts. Is that correct?
It's a reserve, from the reserve, yeah.
Director Coleman, do you remember the costing roughly for the upgrades to the Greenbank tennis courts for them to be able to play pickleball?
Just ask that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor, no, I don't have that number on hand today.
Do you believe it would be less than $50,000?
No, I don't think it would be.
Okay, so it would take more than $50,000 to bring Greenbank's court surfaces up to snuff for them to play pickleball?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not an option. Okay, so I was just gonna offer up Greenbank for the $50,000 we already have for surfaces in a location that we already have. That's 11 minutes from Port Perry. But, okay, that's all, thanks.
So just to go over once again, item number 3 on the recommendation says, the capital forecast as detailed in attachment 1 of this report will be approved in principle and will be subject to potential changes with subsequent budgets. So it's all up for grabs again next year. What did I say? Something funny? No. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. I'm just laughing at the amount of time that we spend on pickleball conversations. We have
on
a
a
massive
forecast.
budget, but regardless, it's important. I believe what Councillor Ross's intentions on this was that once it's laid out as a forecast, that, as he said, we're starting to align staff workload, and the concern was that we may be looking at pointing staff towards focusing on a project that we may not have full support on as of yet. I believe that was part of his concern, was that because it's a forecast, when we're doing staff workload or assignments, we're putting that in mind that, okay, maybe we can't take on this project because we may be getting pickleball courts that they need to work on. Perhaps that adds clarity as to why Councillor Ross was questioning why we need it on here. If we get the grant, fantastic. we can award the money, but we would hate to have staff allocated to something that we may not receive, I believe.
I guess I hear you, but I'm wondering what difference it makes to the rest of the forecasted items, so why just pickleball? Councilor Ross, can you?
Why just pickleball?
Yeah.
I think it's the one that I've identified on this forecast that I don't see the business plan, or there's a lot of important thing. We just talked about Devitt's Road being brought up to snuff, and moving it forward. And I think to have something in here, it's people look at the forecast and say this is the expectation of it going forward. If it's just a placeholder, I think you need more for, like, I think this is an extremely important document, and what we're spending the days and the hours on is that you can't just have things in here because they're nice to haves. I think this is this is in here. It's going to come up next year. And if they have the grant, like I said, then absolutely, we'll support it, go ahead. But in principle, to have it here when we haven't had the discussion about it, if this is a go ahead thing, based on what we've seen right now, I have no doubt that they'll have a business plan in action. I hope that they get the grant to go ahead, but as of it stands right now, when we're approving this, they don't have the grant, they don't have the business plan. I don't know if they have an executive. I haven't seen the metrics on how many people play pickleball, and I haven't seen a breakdown of the other options that have been identified and looked at. So to me, it's just chicken before egg.
Any other comments? Councilor Watton?
If I might, to the director, on any of the forecasts, how much metrics do we have on any of the items that are forecast in the
Business plans?
2021 or the 2022, or like, to Councilor Ross's point, how much work has been done on all of this, including the pickleball, for the matrix and for, to get it to this point?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe there is some thought process and looking at the various resources we have in front of us, that it is a funded forecast, but there is thought put forward. So I would say that there are some metrics utilized to come up with this forecast.
So further to that, then, if we take it out and they did get a grant, then we would have to try and find it, because we have the money like allocated kind of as a placeholder. Is that right? So that if we take it out, that money could go somewhere else, and it may not be there if they get the grant. Is that a correct assumption if we take it out completely?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that is a valid assumption. Right now, it's being funded through the Facility and Building Reserve. If we take it out of the budget and it comes back as an unbudgeted item at some point, then that's a different funding source, the MP Reserve. So if it comes out of this Facility and Building Reserve, then that money could be allocated to a different project and it may not be available.
Okay, and one final question, Madam Mayor, if I may. If we take it out, what does that do to tonight's budget process? Do we have to have it brought forward again in December and revisit it, or, and like, I'm just curious.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it would be an adjustment. No, I wouldn't propose it. It would postpone this budget. I could make that amendment.
Doesn't affect this year at all, though.
Right.
Right, okay. Any other second-time speakers? Okay, seeing none on the amendment. Oh, Councilor Giesring, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering what our amendment is, because I think we all want to know that we have the option of supporting our community pickleballers moving forward. So I'm just wondering, maybe this is a question for our clerk, what's the best way to word the motion with the amendment to ensure that the opportunity is there to support them in future?
Can you read the amendment,
Yeah,
Clerk?
yes, Madam Mayor. I can read you what I wrote down based on what Councillor Ross said, and he can confirm or deny what I've got here. That, and this is just the amendment, that capital project REC 039 outdoor pickleball courts construction be removed from the capital budget forecast unless a grant is received.
Yes, as long as that, thank you through you, Madam Mayor, as long as that gives staff the direction that if a grant comes up, that it can be put back into the forecast, given that this was brought into the forecast between last year and this year, that the money could be found. So as long as the staff has the right direction at that point.
Okay, Director Valentin and then the CAO, because I'm not sure that's, yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it either is in the forecast or it's not in the forecast.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to remove it out of the forecast, but given the concern beforehand that if they get the grant, that staff would not allow it to go back into the grant, that's not the intention of this motion. The intention of the motion is that this is removed from the forecast at this point, and that if a grant is received and that the Port Perry Pickleball Club approaches the township again for money, that it is looked at to go back into the forecast.
Okay, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I don't want to complicate it, but it's the timing of the grant. So if a grant application was submitted and funds were received after this budget is approved, sometime between a week after tonight, if this is approved, and when the budget is being reconsidered, that would be an unbudgeted matter before council. So the budget won't be brought forward to council to be put back in until, the fall of next year. So if it's out of the forecast now and they receive a grant, well, it wouldn't be in 2020, but 2020 or 2021, it would come back as an unbudgeted expenditure, and then as Ms. Valentin said, then we have to find the money somewhere in the reserves, probably in the MP reserve. But what I'm trying to say is it's a timing thing. Can't say if they get a grant, it goes back in the forecast because it's out of the forecast. So, and the forecast has been approved and in place. It would go back in the forecast the next time council reviewed the forecast. But it doesn't prohibit it from coming back as an unbudgeted expenditure, if the monies can be found in the MP reserve.
I'm looking at page 84, and where did I see it? It's, in the first section there, it's got an asterisk beside it, which means it will only proceed if successful grant application or confirmed contributions from others. You understand that? I do. Okay. That's fine. Is everybody, anything further, Director?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify what Mr. CAO was referring to, so if you pull it out of the forecast today, the forecast is then done for this year. Mm-hmm. If the Pickleball Association is successful in getting a grant in 2020, it would come back to council then as an unbudgeted item, and then we would look for that funding if it is available. If there is an application coming forth in 2021 before the budget is approved, it has the opportunity to come back at that point again to be in the budget or the forecast in subsequent years.
To you, Madam Mayor, thank you for that. I think it's worth probably going to a vote soon, but I understand the dilemma, but there's no one here to answer from the Pickleball Association if they're close to applying for a grant or not, but based on the last communication that I had with them, the delegation, it did not appear that they were ready to apply for one. I could be wrong, I don't know, but I would stick to the motion as it stands right now.
Everybody understand the motion, the amendment? No other questions? Councillor Kiesebrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, Director Valentin, is there a different way that you would want the motion worded as it stands right now to respect the heart of what Councillor Ross is asking, which is just that we want to see a more cohesive business plan because when they came before council, they didn't even have an executive at that time. So is there a better way to word the motion to protect our ability to support the pickleballers, but at the same time to reflect the fact that at the present, it doesn't have, I'll stop there.
Through you,
Director?
Madam Mayor, I think I would simplify it and just take it out. And then I would just leave the amendment as that.
Do you want to change your amendment? And just take it out, or what is your wish?
I think the same as before, to take it out of the forecast. Does that change what you've just said?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, I think at the end of the amendment, it said unless there's a grant.
And that muddies the water, does it?
Right, because it'll be out of the forecast. We won't be coming back with the forecast.
Okay.
It's already.
I just don't want going, sorry, through Madam Mayor, going forward that in 2021, next year when we're looking at this, and if we're in the same boat, that staff is saying, no, it will never come back into the forecast. I'm just saying that at this point, we're not ready to put it in the forecast, in my belief. So if next year we're ready to put it in the forecast, I want staff to be open to it going back in the forecast if it fits.
Mr. CEO?
I would suggest you add that it come out of the 2021 to 2024 forecast. That's the current forecast. That would not prohibit it from being included in a future forecast.
And if through you, Madam Mayor, in 2020, if they come back and it's deemed by council that they're ready to go, would it be available to be put into perhaps a 2022 forecast at that time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if you remove it from the 2021, 2024 forecast, it comes out of this forecast, doesn't prohibit it from coming back in the future, nor does it prohibit it from coming back as an unbudgeted award.
Thank you.
I've got a quick question there on that. Like, if they got a grant in 2021, and we put it in the 2023 or whatever forecast, would that grant expire? Because usually you have to have the work done by a specific date. Is that be fair?
I would suggest if we are aware that it's coming forward in 2021 and we can afford it, that we would put it in the 2021 budget.
Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry for the confusion. Looking backwards at last year's capital budget, Rec 039, which is this exact same number we're looking at, was the resurfacing of Ianson Park courts, scheduled for 2022 to be funded through a Trillium grant through the Greenbank Community Association for $150,000, requiring $0 from the municipality. And the purpose was for pickleball. So when did this get changed from Rec 039 last year to Rec 039 this year is my question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so our budgeting software, when projects are utilized, so upon successful budget approval, the project numbers that are identified in this book will actually get a number rather than an alphanumeric number. And they will be given starting with budget year 20. So any of the projects that are approved this year will start with 2001, 2002. So it eliminates the Rec 039. So if that project is removed from the software, removed from the budget, another project will take its place. It just automatically fits in, takes the lowest number and reuses it.
So as a counselor, how do I know when a project that's been identified last year is removed in next year's budget?
Through the next year's budget process.
I just have to go backwards and look and make sure that last year's projects are still in next year's budget?
Well, so staff, through you, Madam Mayor, staff go through all of the projects, all the forecasts, and reprioritize. So based on, and I don't know the specifics on how that project was not included in the forecast, but it must have been with conversations with
Not local counselor, for you, Madam Mayor.
Pardon?
right.
Sorry, that was, it's through the process did not involve the local counselor when it was removed. Is that fair to say?
Not necessarily, correct? It's staff looking at all of the projects and identifying and bringing it forward through this process, through the draft budget, through my conversation, like when the budget is released, I have discussions with council if they want to meet and go through the budget.
Yeah, you're right. Counselor McDougall, your question is not on the amendment, so you can ask it afterwards, though, okay?
Okay, very good, thank
We're going
you.
to deal with
Yeah.
the amendment right now. Are there any other questions on the amendment? Everybody's spoken, I think, at least twice, so.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just want to make sure the amendment's correct after the confusion. The amendment is to remove it from the 2021-2024 forecast.
Okay, everybody clear? All those in favor of the amendment? One, two, three. I gotta break a tie then, do it? So, can you put your hands up again? Those in favor of the amendment? One, two, three. Then it loses. The amendment was lost, right? Pardon? Well, it loses anyway. Okay, to the main motion then. Going back to page 74. Recommended that report, or are there any other questions on the report before we go to the main motion, which has already been moved and seconded, but any other? You have another one? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, taking up the airtime here. Motion to amend report COR 008, which is council chambers.
COR 008. You have a page number for that?
Yep, just 1 second, I'll pull it up. It's going to be 54, oh, sorry, pardon me, 94. Council chambers video overhaul and renovation. If I may, Madam Mayor, through you, I'm looking now at the updated sheet. The initial sheet did not have a price breakdown of the HVAC, closed door renovation, upgrade monitors, and desk reconfiguration. My amendment is to remove the upgraded monitors and the desk reconfiguration from this project, totaling $6,000.
And
Yeah,
Yeah,
and, okay, that's the base of the motion, is just to remove those two from this project list. My concern, as I spoke to before, although I believe an open system would be good at the price tags they are, I've had numerous questions and question it myself as to desk reconfiguration at a price tag of $4,000. And I'm hopeful that perhaps we can find another way of moving desks without that price tag.
do you have a seconder? Counselor Guido. Okay, questions or comments on the amendment? No? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to council, if I could just clarify that, just in terms of the comment for $4,000 for a desk reconfiguration, it's not just moving a desk. Yeah, so I just wanted to make that point, that it's not only moving desks.
What does it include?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council, well, as mentioned at the last budget meeting, it does include obviously partly moving the desk, but as you'll see by the directors right now, there's no hydro power to those desks right now. So it would include running power properly to those desks. It would also include running data cables there. It also include running the microphones there as well, to rewire those microphones also as a part of that project. So that's all inclusive of that project. It would also, because legislative social desk would move back, there'd also need to be data cables run to that cable as well, so that would be included in that desk reconfiguration. So that is the majority of the cost, is all that data and power cabling.
Is there extension cords or something across the floor now?
That's correct, Mayor. Right now, there's an extension cord coming from the presentation desk here, moving back, and that's where you see the director's cables coming or wires coming over the desk to go to that, because there is no power to that cable as it stands right now.
Be a trip hazard then. Okay, any other questions on this amendment? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As far as a trip hazard, has that been identified on the health and safety reports of any tripping hazards that happen?
Mr. Clerk? Chief?
No, it has not. Sorry, through you, Your Worship, no, it has not. And I might point out that it is also.
I don't know if your microphone's on. Oh, okay, then speak into it.
Through you, Your Worship, no, it has not been identified to my knowledge, but I would like to add that it is a fire safety hazard and it's against the fire code using an extension cord as permanent wiring.
Through you, Madam Mayor, then, so have we done a audit of the entire building to see if extension cords are not used on a permanent basis? I was curious about that then.
I personally have, sorry, through you, Your Worship, I personally have not, no.
Is it a plan?
I can make that a plan, Your Worship.
Well, there goes your motion, because now the budget's gonna go higher for all of our extension cord usage. Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm conflicted now that you added that, Chief Burney, on this motion. Sorry, I'm at a loss of words, simply because part of me doesn't necessarily see the need to move desks. I appreciate that this room is used for other things other than a council meeting, and that perhaps it may be viewed as having your back to the audience. But given that our audience the members of, I shouldn't say audience, the members of the public that attend these meetings is very limited, I would hate that is the reason for us moving that. If it's a fire hazard to have an extension cord there, perhaps we can address that rather than having to move desks in order for that to happen. I don't know if that's possible, but yes, if there is fire code violations throughout the entire building, then that probably something we should look into.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Would you like to wrap up, Councillor Ross?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I'd hate for this motion to be swung either way because of an extension cord that perhaps could be plugged in or plugged out at the beginning of a meeting so that it's not a permanent power source. I don't know if that's possible. I don't want it to be derailed by something far greater than this is meant to be. So I'll leave it at that.
Nothing further to the amendment? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, sorry, just one late question, and through you, Madam Mayor. These monitors are the ones that we're talking about replacing, is that correct, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor of the Council, that's correct.
And subsequent to that, how old are they?
15 years, 2004. 15 years.
Okay, well, that's all, thank you.
We occupied this building in 2004. Yeah. Councillor McDougall? Did you have your hand up?
I did have my hand up, Madam Mayor. For clarification, would that modification address the size of that projector there? Is that the same renovation?
Screen?
Yes. I think that's the GP.
Through you, Madam Mayor of the Council, no. This capital budget project does not include that projector or that screen. However, those items will come forward through the operating budget.
Okay. I do know during presentations that we were here for the subdivision south of town, that for the public to try and view the information presented, it was difficult for them to see. So that was an issue.
I have a question. Does it increase the floor space for, you know, big public meetings. Like floor space as far as usable floor space for the public.
I haven't done a measurement to you, Madam Mayor, but I would suggest yes, by moving them to the side, it does create more space down the middle. I did hear at this meeting tonight that we were possibly thinking about having budget sessions within this room. That would certainly help facilitate that type of thing as well, to have those type of presentations. And to Councillor McDougall's point, with a different budget, the screen being upgraded would also increase that for folks in the audience.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Kiesebrink.
I'm wondering if we couldn't, because that projector is already flashing and it's old and the lumens are not good on it. I think it might be more timely to use the desk configuration money and the monitor money and put that money towards. I don't know what the new units would cost. That's the proper type of lumens, but where you can actually read it. I'm wondering if we should do that instead and revisit this in a future budget.
Director Valentin, a comment or an answer on that? Because it's two different budgets, so what is your thought on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor. You could swap them out. I'm not sure if the clerk has the cost identified right now for.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Council. The very, very high level estimate that I have for that projector and that screen is $4,000. That is a very high level estimate.
Further, if I may, Madam Mayor, that's enough said.
Yeah, it wouldn't be to the amendment probably.
To Councillor Ross, would you consider amending your amendment to be that instead, to use the resources for this year instead of using them for desks to replace the projector and the screen, because they are failing, the lights are flashing, they do need to be addressed.
I just would say that this is from the municipal projects reserve. Would the operational budget come from a municipal projects reserve, or would it come from the levy?
It would come through the levy.
It would come from the levy. Okay. Did you want to comment further on?
I don't think there's anything to comment on it. If it's two different budgets, then
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's doable.
It is. I don't think it's doable. Well,
You can swap them out.
you could swap them out, but where would the money come from?
Well, you would just change the description here on capital sheet.
Make it a capital
COR008.
project instead of a?
Yeah.
Okay. So where do we go with this, Councillor Ross?
If I may just ask a quick question to the clerk, is a monitor, the projector, that's an identified project going ahead, is that of the same importance, same priority as these projects here?
Through Madam Mayor to Council. The projector and screen, as you may remember, was brought forward previously to Council, and Council said no to doing that project. So that basically gave me my direction on that project. So it wasn't going to come forward again ever, because I was given that direction. However, it didn't. It then became it needs to be replaced, as Councillor Kiesebrink has pointed out. The two heat sensor lights on that projector are now flashing, indicating that it's going to fail at any moment now. And by the time that was noticed, the capital budget was already finished. It already had been brought forward to Council the draft was finalized. So it was too late at that time for me to include it in the capital budget. So in discussions with the Treasurer, being based on the amount it is, approximately that $4,000 range, it does fit in an item that could be brought forward in the operating budget. Generally speaking, as I understand it, is those projects over 10,000 should really hit the capital budget. So it fit there, and that's why I decided to, because of the need, proposing to put it through the operating budget. Again, that's subject to council approval in any case, but that's the reasoning for it.
Okay, Councillor Ross, it's been suggested that we swap that. Did you want to include that in your amendment, or do you want your amendment to stand as it is and perhaps have another amendment?
If, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. The reasoning behind my amendment was based on these two items within it and the price tag and explaining that to the public. If this is going to go before the operating budget is approved, then it's a necessity, then that makes sense for it to be moved in. If it's coming forward in the operating budget and it's going to last until the operating budget, then I don't know if it's important to move it up so that everybody can actually have a think about it. But I'd be happy to move to replace, to swap out if that's, if it's deemed that this is going to go before the operating budget and we're going to be in front of this anyways, we can deal with it now.
So you want that included in your amendment to swap it?
Let's swap it then.
Okay, do you understand that? And do you want to give the wording? Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification. Swapping which projects? Sorry, because you've identified two projects in your current motion. Which two projects would you, or are you swapping both of them? Are you swapping both of them out, or are you supposed to swapping one for one possibly? I just need a little bit of clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So my motion would be to remove the upgraded monitors at $2,000 and remove the desk reconfiguration at $4,000 and replace them with a projector, and I believe you said upper level is $4,000.
Just a projector and screens, or what?
We've just, and this, do we have a cost estimate for the screen now?
Sorry, I should have clarified. The 4,000 is for the projector and screen. That's the estimate that I have been verbally told.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Projector and screen then? Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody, Councilor Brown?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. If we're going to do this, I understand it'll be smoking before Christmas. But if we change the screen, are we getting a larger screen also? I mean, if this is for the benefit of the people who attend here, then we should make sure that they can, if we're going to make a change, let's make sure that they can see what's going on.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely, that is the intention, is to get a better projector, a larger screen, so that it doesn't squish the picture as it does right now. It'll have a same aspect ratio similar to the TVs do, 16:9 rather than the 4:3. And the intention is for the folks at the back in the audience that will be able to clearly see that screen. That is the intention.
Okay, everybody understand the amendment? Any other further questions or comments? Councilor Guido?
Thank you, and I will second or approve that amendment because I believed and just to clarify then, right now, if this amendment is to go forward, it would be coming from the MP reserve versus a screen and projector coming out of the actual levy. So in theory, this wouldn't impact the levy. It would impact our reserves only to do this. So yes, I support it.
Okay. Councilor McDougall? Okay. Councilor Watton?
Again, through you, Madam Mayor, so we are now adjusting the budget by basically $2,000. Again, can it just be done tonight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, you can make that adjustment. Thank you.
So far, we haven't delayed the budget. Good. Okay, to the amendment. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Anything further? Okay, to the main motion. Whoa, you nearly lost it. Yes, Councilor
I thought
McKim.
you meant anything further from Angus, sorry, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Pub 018. I don't have the page number offhand. Pub 008 is the
018,
018, yeah.
Hub 1018.
Page 171. This structure's been identified that it needs to be replaced. We know it needs to be replaced. In a subsequent report, comms 2019-044 is 171, sorry, Madam Mayor. It's discussed possibly amalgamating the yards. I'm just curious if we're considering possibly amalgamating the yards, does it make sense to replace the sand dome prior to that consideration? Direction to Carol. Coleman, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. At staff level, we have reviewed it and we don't think it would work. But because this funding has become available, we thought, it'd be good to get a third-party review of that. We would delay the actual construction of a new sand dome until after that study is completed, and it has to be done by June 30th of next year, 2020. So we wouldn't build a sand dome before that study was completed.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I know we desperately need that sand dome to be rebuilt, both sand domes to be rebuilt if we are continuing with both. Okay, that's it. On Rec 001, a question with regards to, I believe that's the pool design that's been put forward. I think the year it's put in is 2023. Offhand from memory, I can't recall exactly what the report said we needed for population in the municipality to be able to support a pool, but I think it was in and around 30,000 people. What will our population be in and around 2023 or even 2025? What's our projected population estimates? I think Director Heritage.
Director Heritage?
Sorry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I don't have that information with me right now, but I can provide that to council through an email.
So we don't know our, but we should be approaching 30,000 around 2025.
Oh, no, I think we're less than 30,000, well less than 30,000 by 2025.
So I'm just curious as to the business case moving ahead with the pool and design in 2023.
Well, there's 72% of the people that might have an answer for that.
Myself included, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, me too. Mr. Cieo?
Maybe I can help in that regard. So just back to Ms. Coleman's comments, this is a preliminary design and consultation process to determine an estimate of cost so we can plan better its location and what features might be in the pool. Just to remind council that it is an objective of our strategic plan. So the strategic plan specifically identifies this being done in this term of council. So whether it's 23 or 24, it should be undertaken in conformance with that directive.
Okay, very good. Further, a question is just with regards to the budget document in general. We have items that have been thankfully started off saying roads will proceed if grant, may proceed based on DC charges. Is it fair to say that if they have an asterisk and say will proceed if grant, that there'll be no project proceeding, there'll be no work continuing on that project until after the grant is given? Through to
Through you,
Director?
Madam Mayor, yes, that's the intention, that the project comes forward, but if the grant is not, if there's not a successful grant that provides that funding, the project wouldn't move forward.
further through you, Madam Mayor. So for example, on the Blackstock Recreation Complex, no design will proceed until the grant funding is actually given.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, we are doing the preliminary design with the 150 we have this year. But no, the detailed design at 1.8 million won't proceed unless we get a grant. We don't have that funding.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anything else? Councilor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 76 of our council agenda, in reference to what Councillor McDougall was indicating where there's asterisks and notations, my question is regarding the statement, may not proceed in year identified if sufficient development charge revenue is not collected. Given that we have a CIP that may impact development charges collected, and given how we fund the Blackstock recreation, it may or may not use development charges. Do we have any predictions as to development charges not being collected outside of that? Or why would we indicate that it may not proceed without the development charges?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So every year we have growth projections that are provided. Based on those growth projections, the revenue is identified. So based on building permit projections and building permits that come forward. We don't always meet those growth projections, and sometimes in the past we may surpass them, so we may have more. But as a caveat to this, if we don't collect it, we don't have that funding available, it may delay some of those projects that are identified.
So then if an application comes forward for, in the CIP for the employment lands, and then it'll deplete the development charges even further, which may delay one of these projects based on that funding?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so when, I know this isn't budget related, no?
Sorry, CAO.
If I could, the development charge has to be replenished on the CIP. I just want to clarify that so that we didn't forget that the development charge is not going to deplete the development charge reserve, because that development charge, if council decides to provide that relief, has to be replenished. And we received direction from council on how that could be done. And that's, at this time, will be considered through the operating budget surplus.
Right, but the DC charge that would be funding any of these projects identified in the budget may be affected by any of those DC charges that
Through the mayor, only if we don't replenish it.
if we don't replenish it.
But the DC Act requires us to replenish it. So when council's making a decision to incentivize one of the CIP developments, with that has to come how we're going to return the money to the reserve.
Okay, then, thank you. So further, Madam Mayor, my question then may be restated as the CIP allocations, if any are granted, will not impact any of the projects on the budget forecast.
Through you, Mayor, they should not, because council has to have a replenishing direction for staff, and DC Act prescribes that. I think the reference, as the treasurer's mentioned, is purely to the development forecast. I always say development forecast is only good as the day or week that you do it. And that the development could increase, it could decrease, and we monitor this throughout the year and update it every year to inform the budget. And that's why you do see some swings in the revenues and development charge, specifically related to the forecast, which, as you know, is hard to predict right now and is a little slower than we had anticipated.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. So then, just so I have this understood, because I've received a few questions, and I know this isn't budget related, but it's somewhat, if I can tie it to that if any CIP are granted for DC charges, it's not going to stop projects from moving forward because we are repaying those DC charges. So it won't have any impact anywhere on a project.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, no further questions. I'm looking for, we've got the mover, Councillor Watton, and Councillor Ross is seconded. What's this? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The second part of the recommendation, the 2020 capital budget in the amount of 11,136,000 now, because we had that amendment, right?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, that the 2020 capital budget in the amount of 11,136,000 be approved as amended and detailed in attachment 1 of this report.
11,136,000.
What did I say, 11,000?
Yes. Be a really short,
Oh,
really small
wishful
budget.
thinking. All right, 11,136,000. And that the 2021 to 2024 capital forecast as detailed in attachment 1 of this report be approved in principle and will be subject to potential changes with subsequent budgets. Moved by Councillor Watt and seconded by Councillor Ross. Any further questions? All those in favor? In favor of the budget, the recommendations?
Can I ask a question? Sorry. The question is should that not say as amended?
It did.
Oh, okay. I
We did
thought you
say
said
that.
as attached. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Again, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Whew. Let me see, what else have we got here? Let's see if it's time for a break. Well, we only have 3 more items. Do you think, would you like to have a break or would you like to move ahead? Pardon? Need a drink of water. You want to have a 5-minute break? 5-minute break.
I think we should, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Change them, change it now.
5. Okay. Okay, bring this meeting back to order, and we are moving on to 9.2.2, and Councillor Kiesebrink has pulled that, and it's on page 319.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Director Coleman, the way the report read, and you've already clarified this for me, so I thank you, but it seemed to indicate that we were being asked to provide 130-some thousand funding for a study, but in fact, the report is just for us to apply for the funding, and then hopefully to get that, and then possibly to get further funding that would come out of the efficiencies that are identified in the report. Could you just maybe clarify this for us just a little bit further?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, that's exactly it. So we've given a very short time frame for this project. We were informed, well, the letter came November 12th or 13th, and then I had less than a week to put this report together because it needs a council resolution before we submit it, and it's due December 6th. So it was all very tight time frame, and it's something that wasn't on our plans at all. And so it is an application to apply for funding. They suggest between $20,000 and $200,000 to do a third-party review to find efficiencies. And the reason I have it directed towards roads is because every conversation, everywhere we go, it seems to be the biggest issue in the township. So we've looked at what we can do with this money towards roads, and then hopefully the best part is that if we find something, identify something, and there's another chance to apply for grants to implement that. So that's the part that we're really hoping for out of this.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited for the opportunity, and thank you for all your work to help make this possible.
Okay, thank you. So there is no municipal money going towards this project, correct?
Madam Mayor, that is correct. This, we're applying for grants for 100% funding for this study.
Good, thank you. And if there's a phase 2, we don't know if there's going to be municipal dollars put towards that, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Is that correct? Okay, any questions on this report? Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Coleman. I guess I'm looking for a little bit more detail and clarification in regards to this application. We've just approved the capital budget in which a lot of these things are in there, as far as we spoke to the salt dome. We've got vehicle numbers, building conditions. I'm just wondering, the answers that were given during our questions were very direct, and there was no other questions from us for those. So I'm just wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit more as to why we're doing this, what this is going to give us that we don't have now.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So a lot of these issues staff have looked at before, and we have our own opinions on them. But some issues keep reoccurring. Like, there has to be at least 3 council meetings that I've been to. They said, well, why don't we lease vehicles instead of purchasing them? And we've done our own review of it, and we're confident in our answer. But this money has come forward, so hopefully we can have a third party, tell us, are we right when our assumption that purchasing is the best way to go? And we can put that question to rest once and for all, so that if it comes up again, we can refer to that report and we say that's been answered. Also, I think, as I mentioned just a minute ago, that the biggest thing is we expect it'll confirm a lot of things we know, and that it'll make us eligible for the next round of funding to implement some of these things. So that's what I'm hoping will come out of this.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can you just speak to the next round of funding? Is that a similar grant, or is that to implement what's been identified here? And when would that happen?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I don't know that, and I don't think that the provincial government knows that either. This came out very quickly, and it's very brief. There's very little detail that they've provided us at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? It's important to note, though, that part of the criteria is a third-party review, correct? I just want to make that clear for everybody that it'll be a consultant. Counselor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So Director Coleman, page 321, I guess it is, you've got A, B, C, and D down there. We're talking about proposing to build on this work by a road maintenance and modernization review, which includes and so on and so forth. In here, you just mentioned the third party, so can I presume that we would have a third party analysis of potential of amalgamating the depots from 2 to 1, then you're gonna get an independent word of advice on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's part of the study we're planning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I knew you were going to put your hand up.
I actually wasn't, but thank you through you, Madam Mayor. So the planning that we're, sorry, just a question to Carol. Is the study area and items identified by our staff for study, or will the third party actually identify what they think they need to look at and how they look at it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the councillor, we'll set out a request for proposal and we'll put out our scope of work. Sometimes when we get proposals back, they might make suggestions of other things we could do or ways that we could improve it, and we would look at that as part of the evaluations. Someone might have a great suggestion that we haven't thought of at this point.
I think your list is pretty comprehensive, so I can't imagine that there's a lot different they would suggest, but it is just a question. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, you have a motion, please, that COMS 2019-044 Roads Maintenance Modernization Review be received, and that the submission of an expression of interest under the Ontario Municipal Modernization Program Intake 1 for a road maintenance modernization review be approved and supported by council. Moved by Councillor McDougall, seconded by Councillor Kiesebrink. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And 9.4.4 on page 370, and that is Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just a question for our Director of Corporate Services. I was just wondering, how do you envision our public land listing working, and how would that bring more benefit to the community?
This is the bylaw to adopt an acquisition, sale, or other disposition of land policy for the township.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to council. It has been an increase in number of calls I have been receiving over the past little while about land available for purchase from the township. So essentially, what I intend on doing is creating a list of all township-owned land and land that is possible for sale. So it wouldn't include things like walkways and things like that, sort of, you know, small pieces of land like that. And then bringing that, making that sort of public. And then if we get some folks looking for the possibility of purchasing township-owned land, they could look at that list, because I often get asked those questions. And that list, you know, in consultation with the planning department, would include things like what the zoning is for those that type of property, and sort of that type of general information, which is readily available if you know, we would give it out anyway. And then, so that would just allow those folks to possible development opportunities to look at that list themselves, and if they wanted to, you know, do their own research on that property themselves and then make sort of an offer, then, you know, we could bring that information and to council and decide whether the council do want to declare it surplus, and we go through that, basically the policy as you see fit there. So that's the intention of the list, is to just have that complete list of township-owned properties.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this? Do I have a mover? I have a mover, please, for that this bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 25th day of November 2019. The mayor and clerk are hereby directed to sign same and affix the corporate seal thereto. Councillor Kiesebrink, Councillor Brown. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 9.4.5 on page 380, and it's the bylaw to establish an emergency management plan for the Township of Scugog. We dealt with this at the Committee of the Whole meeting last week, and, or not on November 4th. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To our Fire Chief Bernie, I believe we have 35 evacuee centers, but when I was looking at Durham Region's website and also our emergency preparedness websites, none of our evacuee centers are identified. Is that an intentional masking of where those facilities are?
Through
Chief?
you, your worship. Yes, that's correct.
The reason for that?
Through you, your worship, protection of the public and the facility itself in the event of a hostile emergency.
Anything further?
So back in 2006, the Uxbridge Community Center had 300 individuals participate with 100 volunteer evacuees, and the fire and Durham Region Social Services and so on, and health and medical and so on, and police were on hand to simulate a response to a derailment of a train carrying toxic substances. And conducting exercises is a municipal responsibility, and from time to time is done in coordination with the Durham Emergency Management Office. You indicated in 12.1.2. Are there going to be further emergency response simulations to help prepare Scugog and our staff and council in the future?
Through you, your worship. As we expand the program committee and talk more about how we can expand our whole emergency preparedness programming, I would suggest yes, we will to some extent perform some form of emergency operations on a test basis. You know, a classic example would be perhaps with the hospital again. You know, after the events of 2016, they're more than willing participants to perform an exercise like that. So, yes to your answer, or to your question. Pardon me.
Chief, we have done some tabletop exercises amongst ourselves and with the region, have we not?
Yes, your worship, that is correct, and thank you for that. We're required annually to perform some level of exercise within our programming, and annually we exercise tabletop, usually with our group here, our control group here, and depending on to what level the regent wants to exercise, they like to ramp it up a little bit in the south, and good for them. But yes, we do participate on a regular basis with the region as well. So there's various levels of exercising in the program.
And I believe years ago, long time ago, there was an actual exercise with volunteers, and it was up at the fairgrounds, but it's quite a while ago. Anything else? Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, I'm looking for a mover, please. That bylaw 78-19 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 25th day of November 2019, and the mayor and clerk are hereby directed to sign same and affix the corporate seal thereto. Councillor McDougall, Councillor Ross. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. No notices of motion, no new business, no closed session. Confirming bylaw. Motion to confirm the proceedings today. Councillor Ross, Councillor Kiesebrink. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Ross and Kiesebrink. And motion to adjourn. Councillor Guido, seconded. Councillor Brown, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.